Hi and welcome back. This is the second video in the two-part series on ethical investing. And in this video, we're going to go through the more specifics in how you can actually find ethical investments using particular parameters and frameworks that are out there. I'm going to start off by talking about principles for responsible investing, then go into environmental, social, and governance screening, and finally talk about B corporations. So, Principles for Responsible Investing is often abbreviated to PRI, and it's a UN-supported network of investors. And these are usually funds, asset managers, who have become signatories of this body, and currently there are over 3,000 of them, and they all agree to these 6 principles that the UN's put together. And you can see they incorporate ESG screening. We'll go into exactly what that means. They're active owners, so they vote to try and encourage companies to do good things. They encourage companies to disclose their ESG, again we'll go into that. They promote acceptance of the principles of these very principles in the investment industry. They collaborate with other signatories of these other 3,000 or so funds, and they report on the progress of their implementation of these principles. So you can find out which companies are part of this PRI by just going on their website, and if you're investing in a fund, you can always look it up and see, have they signed up to these? Do they agree with these principles? And that's usually a good tick. But as I said, with 3,000, it's quite a common thing. So most of the big guys are part of it. It doesn't mean that everything they do is ethical. It just means that they're agreeing in practice to incorporate these principles. So I've given an example here. I've searched for Vanguard. They're one of the biggest fund managers in the world with many ETFs, some of which we've gone through, and they're a signatory. Then the next type of, well, in this case, finding investments that are ethical, you use what's called ESG screening, and that's environmental, social, and governance. And that's a process by which companies, stocks really, that you can buy shares in, scored on certain criteria, in environmental criteria, social criteria, and governance criteria. And there's a list here of some of the things that are taken into account. I won't go through them all. They're relatively straightforward, but in the end, every company receives a score based on these criteria. And funds that are adhering, they say, to ESG principles screen out those companies. So any company, for instance, that has negative impacts on climate change, such as a big oil or gas producer, will get a low score probably, so then a fund won't be able to invest in it. They'll have parameters where they don't invest in bad ESG companies. So as an investor, you can find out which companies score highly in this ESG criteria, and that's done through an organization called MSCI, and you can go on their website, and I show you an example here, and search their database of companies. It's not a complete list, but it's the biggest companies in the world that they've done analysis on, and they give them a score and a rating, and it goes from CCC, it's the lowest, all the way up to AAA. So if you're interested in a company, you can search that and see how well it does. So I've given as an example here of a high scoring company is DSM of the Netherlands in the chemical sector and nutrition, and you can see here they're pretty consistent. They've gone from AA in April 18 up to AAA, and they've held that for the last 2 years now, pretty much. So that's a high score you can get. The way they do their scorings, as you can see on the bottom right, is by lining up companies in an industry and seeing who rates the highest in that. So it doesn't mean that necessarily this company is outstanding, it just means that it's better than all the other companies in that industry. So you can see here, it's grouped by specialty chemicals, and they say N equals 52. That means the number of companies in this grouping or index of specialty chemicals is 52, and DSM is in the top 15%, and that's what makes it AAA. And you can look for further information on that through this website, and then you can also go onto DSM's website and see they'll have a lot of commentary on their own ESG practices, because they obviously are doing well and rate highly. Then you can also use the same website to look for funds, and MESCI will tell you which funds own a lot of companies that also rate highly on ESG, on these same factors. And I've done a random search here for Amundi, and we've been through this as an ETF another time. And this is a fund that invests in, as you can see there, SRI companies. It says Amundi Index, MSCI, World SRI, a lot of other acronyms which we go into another time, but it's already telling you that they practice socially responsible investing. So it's no surprise that the companies that they own are solid ones from an ESG point of view. And you can see in the bottom left it tells you they rank in the 96th percentile for the global equity market for funds that invest in equities, and of their peers they're 95th. So that's, I should say, the other way around. The peer means that that's all the funds that invest in equities, and global means all funds together. So they rank very highly in this, and they get an AA rating altogether. And you can see in the bottom right, that's the composition of the companies they own, how those companies rank, and they're pretty heavily weighted to AA and AAA. So a fund, it's rare that it's going to get AAA because all the companies that it owns will unlikely be all AAA because there just aren't enough AAA companies. But this one has a very high proportion of them. So this is a very ethical fund as funds go from this ESG point of view. So you can use this to search in any fund you're interested in any time. Now, the next type of resource you can have as an investor to find ethical investments is a company called B Corporation, or an organization. And this helps companies become certified. So they become certified as a B Corp through this organization called B Corporation. And to become a B Corp, that's a company becomes a B Corp, they have to show, according to the B Corp website, the highest standards of social and environmental performance, public transparency, and legal accountability to balance profit and purpose. So again, this, as we went through last time, that's kind of the highest idea of ethical investing, that you're balancing profit and purpose. And so this B Corporation, to be signed up to it, they keep you pretty honest to that, and you have to really show that. And there aren't many B Corporations around the world because it's quite rigorous, the process. And obviously the companies have to opt to become certified, and it's quite an intense process, like being audited pretty much. And here are some examples of some well-known companies that are B Corporations, so they've gone through this whole auditing process to show that they meet these high levels, high standards. And Allbirds, you might know the shoe company, Patagonia, probably all heard of the clothing company, Ben & Jerry's, ice cream, and Aesop in the cosmetics. So they're well-known ones. Then the question is, can you invest in these? So not all of them. Many of these are private companies, the ones that I show here. Ben & Jerry's, though, for instance, you can buy it because it's owned by Unilever, but you can't own it directly, but you can own Unilever stock, for instance. But there are some publicly tradable B Corporations, and I put a list here. There's Natura & Co., which is a Brazilian-based cosmetics company that owns, for instance, the Body Shop. Then there's Australian Ethical, which is a pension fund based in Australia. This is also a B Corporation. There's Laurel Education, which owns some universities around the world. That's also signed up. There's Danone, the big French food company that does a lot of yogurts and increasingly plant-based protein. So their US subsidiary is completely B Corporation. The whole organization isn't yet, but they're hoping to become one. And then finally Etsy, which you may know or may have used, the online shop, is used to be a B Corporation, and I'm not sure exactly why they aren't anymore. It's not fully disclosed, but they are generally focused on ethical outcomes. So these three kind of frameworks are useful resources, and I hope you can use them. I hope they're a benefit, and I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next video.